Okay, great. Um, so I think that it was really fun. I mean, of course, it was fun because like there was a lot of play involved, and I found like if I found like it was easier because like I wasn't like there was no pressure basically. I knew where I was working. I was in my room, and so like I knew the material that were available. So I already kind of like idea came up by looking at object and what I had. Um I found really like what I liked the most was like how we could collaborate. So like we all made our own things separately, but then we had to come together. So like I like that, like I like to see what you've done, and then like through the picture that you share in Padlet, and then I like to see what it could evolve from there. And especially the video that we did, it was quite fun to kind of like by distance understand like you put something there so it comes to your way. So like there's a lot of planning, and I'm not used to do this kind of planning because I used to be in front of someone and show the object, and it's always easier when you are there. In this case it was a bit more like you have to be precise, like you have to give directions specifically in order for the other person to understand you. So I found quite challenging, but quite interesting to see like the alternative or collaboration. I mean, like we know that like we don't know how long it's gonna be like this, and we don't want to give up on working with other people, which I really enjoy. So like I like the idea of that of like yeah, and also like learning by doing. So like there's a lot of like we were doing it and learning and redo it, and then redefine it. It's like being an artist and being a studio, try it out, and then like if it doesn't work you work again. But in this case there were more artists in the same studio. So yeah, so that's what I kind of like got from today.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the point about sort of doing it separately and then coming together, because especially with COVID and stuff, you still want to, even though we're so separate, want to have that feeling of connection. And I think more than anything I've done in ages, I felt really connected with you guys. And it's that fun aspect and bringing people together has been, it's, you know, it's a really nice part of it. And also because the workshop was that idea of being connected but disconnected, so there's still that idea here, we're completely disconnected but we're connected. So I think that's a thing for me. And also the idea of just sort of seeing objects around the house and being like, I'm gonna form this and do this, and this is going to be something that has a function, but now it's also counts as art. It's just sort of form like making sure, you know, anyone doing this workshop can question things or see that you don't have to completely think, art doesn't have to be conforming. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I'll draw on that point as well, sort of thinking about how we can use materials, whether it's a sustainable material or an object, and how it has its own function, but then it transforms or can be transformed into another purpose. And that could be art making, it could be for something quite playful, but it's that creativity that comes from almost like that unknown space of not really realizing that object to have its potential as an alternative form. And we've sort of been able to translate that and also connect ourselves digitally as well. So also the material of the digital has been another element, as well as sort of the actual physical that we can see in front of us, sort of, or touch or feel. um, yeah, I think my initial thoughts and feelings were, um, when I was making it, was sort of playing around and being very playful with materials and thinking how else can I use them to perform a specific function. And then realizing when certain elements didn't work and changing it and adapting it. Um, to work and create sort of a start and an end point and getting it to that goal. But then the more I reflect on it, I start to think about other concepts or ideas to do with materiality, to do with the physical, the digital, now, so because of COVID, as well as the objects, the sort of this embodiment of objects as well, and reinforcement.
Yeah, sounds good. It's just that also just sort of working within restrictions, and also the sustainability aspect, the fact that our finished piece is digital and everything else can be deconstructed. Well, mostly I've got a bit of tape to throw away, but you know what I mean, where it's like I can still drink the Aperol, I can still wear my shoe.
There is a lot of like sustainability because you're actually using what you got. We haven't asked and we wouldn't ask people to buy material to do in the workshop. We ask them to use what they got. So I feel like what you were saying about art and the non-conformity of art, like the fact that you don't need specific material to be creative. You need to use what you got and like make your mind function in how to make the most of it, and like in terms of time, in terms of space, in terms of materials, you need that. So like actually it's a good point that I feel like I'm always like really inclined of like using what you got rather than buying art materials. Like yes, certain times, like painting needs certain materials, but sculpture not necessarily, for example. So like especially with media like sculpture that you can do it, why don't you do it? Like don't try an excuse not to do it because like, oh, I haven't got clay. You don't need clay. So I guess like, yeah, that's a good point. I enjoy that. Yeah.
And so as well as that point of sort of accessibility, and almost just playing and experimenting, and like discovering something that you hadn't quite realized, and particularly with sort of these materials, I didn't really have an end idea of how it was gonna all come together. It just sort of came together. Whereas when I start to think about, maybe using clay, I'm a bit more precious with it.
Yeah.
Or like if I'm using a canvas, I'm a little bit more like, oh gosh, I need to make sure that that mark really works or it looks okay. From my previous experience of using those materials, I sort of tense up a bit more. But yeah, this, I was able to like really enjoy what I was doing. And through that enjoyment, it allowed me to think about other ideas and other ways of working with materials.
Do you think it's a bit kind of like this is a version of 3D sketching? So, obviously you don't have to worry about, what's it going to exactly look like? You're just sort of getting, doing a bit of sculpture for the fun of it as well, and seeing how things go, and it can develop ideas. So I don't know whether we just sort of think this is a kind of equivalent to 3D sketching as well.
I think so. Yeah, I like the idea that like, I like these. Like, I feel like these could be an alternative to a portfolio. Like, you don't have to make a portfolio just by like a book, but maybe your portfolio could be a digital portfolio where it could be a video of you. Like for example, the time lapse that Francie was talking about. You experimenting. That's your 3D sketching. Like, sometimes you don't need to sketch. I'm crumbling, like what's the point of like me drawing myself scrambling like a ball of paper when I can actually do it, take a picture or like make a video, and that's my I love the idea of 3D sketching. I feel like it's really it's really good.
And even what we're doing now, sort of recording our thoughts straight from the initial almost experiment, and like sort of verbalizing it and discussing it, rather than it being sort of like just a individual written reflection. So it allows an alternative sort of pedagogy, particularly for assessment. So if we were to bring it into schools, allowing pupils that opportunity to document and discuss their work in other ways which suit their individual needs. So, for example, if a student has dyslexia or is EAL and struggles to write things down, this could be an alternative method, which could be played when, you know, when an examiner comes around. And I think it also nods to ideas of performance art as well, and installation, and the video and this discussion possibly becoming another artwork in itself, if you wanted it to, you know.
Yeah, I think there should be more choice about documentation, and I feel like, especially when you do GCSE, you should show different way of documenting your work done by artists. Like we talk about Marina Abramovic, we talk about performer. They don't usually sketch first. They probably do storyboard, maybe if they have to do a video that needs like a. But like if they do a performance, they maybe yes record they trying the performance and then performing. Like the documentation, the video documentation, that like maybe like the shooting documentation, that's their portfolio and that's their way of sketching. So I feel like GCSE need to be really considering that like doing like a sketchbook is not the only way that it works. Like I know that we're not trying to train artists, so like I understand that, but like also why we are restraining the students on recording the way we think is good. I'm not particularly good at sketching. And I'm not particularly like I don't like doing the portfolio with sticking and stuff. Why could I not have the alternative? And I heard that like you have the alternative, but like no one said like clearly it's not like no one ever said that you can't do a video. But I don't feel it's enforced enough. I feel like people just like feel like oh, but I'm the only one doing it. So like I feel like yes, you are free to do it, but it is kind of like this afraid like or scared feel the way you feel like, oh, but why am I the only one doing it? And I feel like if we push it and like there was more like encouraging and like,
I think as well another point to bear in mind is sort of the time or the standardization of documentation. So it makes it easier um, to mark sketchbooks, you know, rather than have all these alternatives.
Yeah.
However, with that, are we reducing creativity and development in these new technologies as well? Also, accessibility. Thinking again about how many students or how many teachers have access to create these resources as well, or to reflect in this way. But again, it's about differentiation too, and it not being a tick box thing like, oh, you could do a sketchbook, you could do like a video, it has to be this, it has to be that. It's what suits the individual, and for their needs, and allowing that accessibility for that individual, is really important in forms of documentation, and also in realization, in realizing what other things that you could be really good at and what really excites you, what motivates you. And doing this has really motivated me. It's got me really excited, about using materials, about connecting in different ways. Like I loved how we managed to connect our videos as well, and it felt like we were almost in the same room, but we weren't again. And that's really awesome.
Sounds good. I think we've got it, guys.
Great. Should I stop recording?
Yeah.